Hi everyone, welcome back. Okay, with this video I'm going to show you, let's paint a little rock. Okay, we'll do a quick little rock and then I'll do another one where I'll show you on a flower. Okay, all right. And so what I'm going to do is take some of this stuff off the surface. And this is the other thing. I thought, oh, I was just about to do this and I thought, oh, I'll show everyone this. Water is your solvent. So I just filmed this just a few moments ago. Water is your solvent to acrylics. And so, you know, in a good acrylic, it will stay permeable to the solvent for a couple of hours. So, see, I can just wipe it down there with water. This is just a damp paper towel, and I can remove some of this right off of the surface that I don't need it all on there. And the more I work it, the more it'll take off. Up here, where I don't have any of that extender, yes, it still does it. See how I can take that off? But I have to scrub on it a little harder because it dries up a little quicker. But see, I can still, water is its solvent. Even though that is dry, I can just take it and scrub on it a little bit and I'll take it off. Okay, so water is your solvent. Now, if you know you're using an acrylic that you put that on a surface like that and 15 minutes later you can't remove it or you can't take it off, then you should look at some way to extend your acrylics in your painting technique. In other words, mix in a little bit of extender into it. Or Diarylide makes what is called the open medium, which I really like, which slows down the drying time, and you'll see me use that in several videos. Or add the extender like I showed you in the last video. Add the extender to it, and that'll give you a longer working time to it. But I'm going to paint here with this pure acrylic and show you, you know, some of the ways and do that. Let's just paint a little rock. So, you know, rocks and stuff like I have up here on this particular painting here. Okay, and let's do it up here because then in the next video I'll show you a little rose right down here. I'll just fill up. I want this rock to stay workable for just 15 minutes or so here. So I'll just put a little bit of extender, not a lot. I just want to fill up until you can feel the difference. So this is matte, you can hear it, and this is not. You can hear the difference actually. You could hear the difference between them. This is smoother. Your hand slides over it. And what is happening is I'm filling up the surface and it's drinking up the extender. This is going to give me longer time to work my colors. But I don't want to put on so much that my colors bleed out, if that makes sense, okay? All right, so let's just paint a little rock, and I'll show you a couple ways in which we can blend. So a standard palette here, good rock colors are burnt siennas, blues, this, you know, warmer burnt siennas for the warm side, blues, violets for the cool side. So we have some good rock colors here, okay? Let's just take a medium kind of color here that we'll start a rock with. Let's just put one right in here. Let's just say we're going to have a rock here. We'll bring in the light this way. So we'll bring a plane this way and right into here, just like what we did in this video here. This video is up on the channel, so watch for this. You know, you can go back and look at the channel and see that video, okay? So let's put that on there. Let's just take a little bit of blue here, just a light little blue. We'll feed a little extender into this, maybe a little violet color here, just so we have a little water underneath this rock, just so we can see it, okay? And you can see, because I've filled up the edge here, okay, I can get a real smooth edge. This is called the smoothing of the edge. I can work these two tones together and really kind of blend them together there, because my acrylics stay very wet because I have filled up the grain here, or the wood, with some of that color. Now, if I take, let's just take a little darker color up over here. Let me show you the difference up here like I just did in the last video. Up here it's dry, right? And so if I try to work any other color in there, so let's just take a little light color and try to work that in there, that's hard. But see, that kind of look I like. I like that in some of my flowers and backgrounds and stuff like that. This is what's called the granulated look. This is the blended look here. So there's a difference between them, okay? So right over here, if I dry out let's say I want to get a little more granulated look here. I'll dry out my colors here, take the moisture out of that area there. You can kind of see it, it's dry. And then if I come in here with any of this color, I will get more of the granulated look. See, that's the granulated look, that's the smooth look. See the difference between the two? So this is what we call granulation. All of that, like I showed you in the last video, is all dependent upon moisture in the surface of the that you're painting on. The smoothness, the slickness of the surface, a real slick surface is going to slide. But more than anything else, moisture. And so we can add moisture to the paint, or we can add moisture in the very beginning. Now see, this is going to stay wet for a long time. And I can manipulate these edges for quite a long time, even as an acrylic, because there's so much extender into it, it's just going to stay wet. All right? Okay, so let's keep going here. So, and maybe I'll paint a little bit of a drier rock right up here. So let's just take some of this, and let's just light, maybe slightly different color, so we'll get a good look to it. But let's just say we're going to have a different rock right up here, and we'll do it more granulated or drier or something here. Okay, and so if I'm going to come up here with a light source, like on that top one, I'll leave my paint very dry, and I'll come up here and I'll draw my light source down. Now see that little edge? See the granulation of the edge? That's what happens as I start to run out of paint and start to run out of moisture. And I like that in my paints. I don't like it to always go real smooth. So that's where my light comes in right there. Now I'm going to give that just a couple minutes here to dry up. Let's go down and work on this one. So we'll take some light color. Let's say we're going to put our light source in here. Here comes the light source side of my rock. And those of you that paint rocks with me and stuff inside in any kind of scene or landscape or stuff, we have three planes. We have a light struck plane, we have a receding plane, and we're going to have a shadow plane. So for the receding plane, all I do is darken down a little bit. A receding plane is halfway between the light plane and the shadow plane. So if I say that's a receding plane, and my shadows, my darkest part of my rock, will be right down here. So now I've got basically three values: a light, a medium, and a dark. So my shadow plane would be right down here. That's my shadow that I want to have into my rock. And if you notice, I don't get that granulated look. Everything is smooth. See how everything is smooth? My brush slides over the surface really easy. That's because I filled the surface all up with extender. So everything is wet. See, even on my fingers, you can see the wetness on my fingers, okay? Now, let's put in a little bit of our receding plane, okay? So our receding plane would come in here. So our receding plane sits between our light plane and our shadow plane. Now, I got to bring these together. And this is the beautiful thing about working with extender. I work with open medium. I can just pinch wipe my brush like this, take out some of that color, step back on my brush, step back on the handle of your brush, which lightens the pressure on the tip of the brush, and I can just come through like this and blend those together if I want to. Bring them together. And you'll get yourself a beautiful blend to your rock. Smooth it all the way across. I can pinch wipe my brush like this. I can bring that shadow and that receding tone right together with a few strokes like that. It's really easy to do, and it's really easy to do because I filled up that moisture there first, okay? And I can come in here and say, hey, I want to have a little bit more shadow. Maybe I want to go darker. Let's go darker violet. A little bit of blue and some burnt sienna. Let's get a darker tone yet. Okay, there's a little bit of glare there, but you can see it's a darker tone yet. Let's put that as a real deep shadow over here. Now, because everything is still so wet, maybe we'll drag just a bit of that right along here. Everything is so wet, I can just pinch wipe that out of my brush, okay? Sometimes I'll put a little extender in it, but I really don't need to. I have enough paint there. But I'll step back. This is why I use a long handle brush. I step back on the handle, which makes the tip of the brush really soft, and I just come in here, and sometimes I'll pull down. I do all different kinds of things. I'll wipe my brush a bit because I don't want the dark to overpower that mid-tone or that other shadow, you know, too fast. So I'll just wipe it, and then I can start to move some of the excess out of there. And if I want to soften that edge, I generally pulled my light down into my shadow. That's how I generally do it, like that, pulling it down. Not always, that's not a rule, but I generally do that. So I start to get that interest. Now we need to soften that right there a little bit. Let's soften that. And so I just, so I generally pull my light down into my shadow, and that starts to soften that edge, see? I just do it a few times. I don't like to get rid of all of the movement. I don't always like to do that, but you can see I can make an absolutely smooth rock pretty easy. And if I want to come in and add some more light, let's just go right back up here. Let's add a little more light, maybe another light little hit right up there. Now what I do is I pinch wipe my brush, take some of that off of that edge. And these are the fusion brushes. These fusion brushes are made to do this. They're very, very soft. So they're not a digging brush like a bristle brush or something. You want to have a very soft, soft-haired brush, you know, like a sable or this fusion. And then I'll pinch wipe that off, and I'll pull my light down into, let's just move this over a little bit, pull that down, pull my light down into my shadow. So I'll work here, pull my light down into my shadow. And I like to work brush marks in all different kinds of directions when I'm painting a rock. And so I'll get that. But that rock is, you see, I like this rock. That rock is really smooth. And so I might come back 3 or 4 times, maybe a little bit of blue into this. And, you know, I might put a little blue color. This is what we call the broken color of working it. So I get a little bit more of a bluish tone in there. Maybe I want just a little bit more of a warmer tone up into the front. I can work that in. Pinch wipe your brush, right like this. So step back on your brush, work your light down into your dark. Let's pull this light right down into the dark, and I can start to soften it out. And I would probably leave some of those brush marks. Sometimes you can, you know, soften them all out. Leave little hits and little marks. I like to leave little marks into them, and this starts to add character and stuff like that to your rock. You can take back up a little bit of your dark and make like a little crack or something like that in your rock. Pinch wipe your brush. Pull from the light down into the dark to set that crack, or backwards here onto this one, pull up. So if you want to push that crack into that rock there, you can do that. So you can do all different kinds of things. And that's going to stay wet for quite a long time here as you to work it. If I grab any paint onto my palette as I work it, I always add a little bit of extender to that paint. And you don't want your paint to dry up. The extenders and stuff like that will keep that color wet. So let's just push a little bit of that so you can see how how water would come into that. If you wanted to put a little water's edge on that, we do that with the edge of our light, you know, with some light, and you can pull and tap along that, put some of the edge of water or something like that. Now that rock is very, very smooth. But what I like to paint a lot of times is the granulated rock. So this is almost dry up here, okay? So what I'm going to do is, this all has extender in it. This is how I like to paint. I don't always like extender because I like brush marks. See all these? These are brush marks all into this rock here. So I don't always like to have that. And so what I'd like to do, you know, most of the time is I like to have some kind of, in fact, let's come right down here. That one is, let's come down here and we'll paint a pure acrylic one. So that has extender in it. Let's come over here and let's not add anything to it, and no extenders. So we're going to paint pure acrylic. I want this to dry relatively quickly. So we'll come right in here. So I'm going to paint this rock, this edge. And you can see I get this. See this into my paint? That's what I call the granulated edge. And I like that. It doesn't do it here because I got lots of paint. But as I lift the pressure of my brush or I run out of paint, I get what is called the granulated edge. And that is what I like, that granulated edge. So let's make up this. So this color, now this is going to dry pretty quickly because there's nothing in it to stop this from slowing down. I mean, for making it dry slower. Let's come in here and let's add a little shadow. This is how I love to paint rocks now. So I'll add a shadow here. See, that's the granulated stroke. That's what I like happening in my rocks. That's what I like happening in my flowers. Granulated strokes. That makes it look more natural than being too smooth. But I might paint a rock in the back like that, you know. But so here I'll push that in there like that on that rock. So I get that granulation. Maybe I want to have that just a touch darker. So now I'm using the moisture grabbing, see, and it's already starting to dry. I use the moisture grabbing surface of this board to facilitate the technique that I want to use on this rock. Now, so I got this light to dark, but unlike this one, these start to dry up real fast and I can't blend them right away together because they're already starting to dry. There are two ways to look at it. So, and you're the artist. If you don't want it to dry, add extender to it or add some open medium. Add this open medium to it. Works really, really well. I don't mind it drying. The heritage paint that we have is designed to stay wet for a while. In other words, it stays wet to its solvent. What's the solvent in an acrylic? Water, right? So as this starts to dry up here, it's still a little bit red there where I had it, but if this is dry right here, okay? So if I wanted to blend this together right there, all I have to do is take my brush, and what I do a lot of times is I take a mister bottle and I just mist the surface here until I get some beads of water. I know it's hard to see, but I'll just tap into one of those little beads of water. I'll put that in my brush and I can come right back through here and I can blend if I want to. See that? See how I can pull my light right down into my dark and I can blend. I can blend afterwards if I want to, because the paint will stay subject to the solvent for about an hour or so. It depends on the conditions. Some of you might only have 15 or 20 minutes, but you know, it shouldn't be ever be any shorter than that. And if it is, just add a little extender. Depends on where you live and what the humidity is. But I can work that and blend that just like I do up here without any extender, just using water. But over here, this is dry. So I can work that. If I say, ooh, I want to soften that, I'll just touch into a little bit of water right into my brush and light. And it's important that you use a very soft brush. Lightly come over it and see how it reactivates the paint. And I can blend that and soften that out if I want to. So that's one way. And it's a way that I will use every once in a while. I call it solvent blending because that's what it is. And so, you know, you can look back into some of my rose videos and stuff on the channel and you'll see where I show you solvent blending, okay? So I can use the solvent, the part that keeps the paint wet. But what I like more than anything else, let me restate some of these colors. So, and it doesn't need to be perfect. How I paint, and you can watch me paint those rocks and stuff like I said on that video. I like to come in like this, and I like a certain amount of dragging that happens. I like the natural look of stuff dragging and brush marks. And so I'll push that there. Let's push a little bit of light that has some, maybe some white in it here. Whoops, don't touch that. That has extender in it. We'll come over here with the light. Let's put a little bit of light. See, I put these marks on like this. And that's what I call them, marks. And now what I do is I create, this is the way I love to paint. I leave the power of those marks and I start painting halftones. And what a halftone is I have my light and I have my dark and I come halfway between. I take a little dark and maybe that's a little too blue for me. But I create a value right in between the two. Let's just say right here. And that becomes my mid-tone area of my rock, right there, boom. maybe I want to go just a touch lighter, warmer, so I add a bit more light and I go this way towards my light and I'll soften that across my light. And see, it's not as light as there, but it's a nice between. So now I have this value, this value, this value, and that value. Do you see? I have 1, 2, 3, 4 values there. And if I want to soften between here and here, I'll come right up over here towards this halftone. I'll put that right on there, and that'll soften that mark. See? Maybe 1 or 2 strokes, and I soften that mark. This is what I call tone painting, half-tone painting, tone painting. I don't worry about the acrylics drying because what I'm doing is putting on different tones. Let's say I want to slide, so my shadow tone there, it's mostly gone. Let's just make up a little more shadow tone here, okay? Little different. I never make the same tone twice. And that's why when you look at a rock like this, see all these different colors in here? I don't make the same tone twice. So I'll put some of that tone in there. That's kind of good. Maybe I want just a little more blue at the very bottom of that. So I'll push a little more blue, a little different, see? And that looks pretty good right in there. Now I've got to soften between there and there. So I'm right here and I want to go that way. Maybe a little bit of light. Okay, maybe even a touch, let's put a touch of red or green into it. This is what we call broken color. You'll see me use broken color. So I want to be between here and here. So a little bit more light maybe. Right here. And I watch my tone. This is what I'm doing on my palette, is I'm watching the tone. This is my rock, see? So I know this color will fit right in between there, see? And if I want to soften that edge, maybe I slide back down to this one, put a little bit of that in there, and I'll make a mark. And if I want to soften it there to there, sometimes, and this is why you see me all the time paint with a paper towel, I've got a lot of that color in there, and I want to make a little mark. This color will overpower it, so I just wipe it off like this. I go up to my lighter color, put a little bit of that in there, and let's just pull down and soften that mark. See? Now this, you can see those little streaks? That's what's called the granulated stroke. That's what I like. When this starts to dry up a little bit, you can see I get these little streaks and little marks. That's what I like in my rocks. That's what I like to happen to my rocks because it starts to give more interest. I want to soften right along there. Maybe I want a little bit of red into that. Let's put just a little bit of a reddish mark into that. Soften that edge right there like that. So now you see I start to get a lot of tones in there. I can make it as smooth as that. Let's say I don't want to put a tone in there. I want to smooth that out. How would you smooth that? Well, that's getting dry. See, that's getting dry in there. How would you smooth that? Well, you would use your solvent. Rinse your brush, grab your solvent, put your solvent in there. Maybe not too much, Dave. Put some solvent in there and just lightly pull over it a couple times and start blending it together. See? And boom, I soften that edge. So if I don't like that mark right there, I like it, but let's say I don't. Soften your brush, little bit of moisture, and just pull through it real quickly like that, and you'll soften that mark. Now you see you get a rock that has basically the light struck plane, the receding plane, the shadow plane, and a couple other little things going on. And I can see if I take this over here, even this is starting to dry up now just a bit. But if I go grab this and put this on, this is the granulated stroke, right? You can see the granulated stroke. How do I avoid that granulated stroke? Grab yourself some moisture. Put a little bit of moisture into it. Grab some of that extender so that the paint slides and start to slide that right across the surface there like that. And you'll get that smoother look to that area. Do you want to leave it rough? I like rocks that have a lot of roughness to them. You know, I could have softened all of that out, but I don't like it. Okay, I mean, I don't always like to do that, right? So let me just show you this here. So let's bring this rock over. Let's say, because I did this painting, when did I do this painting? I did this painting over a month ago, right? And it's on the channel. You can go back and look at it on the channel. But let's say I decided to, let's say, to increase the light that's right here. Now, so I'll come in here, acrylic. I'll pick up some acrylic, some light. It's a nice warm, maybe a little burnt sienna, a little bit of yellow. We'll make a nice light warm. Let's say I wanted to increase the warmth right here. Boom. See? This is how I love to paint. And see, I love that granulation. Do you see that granulation? Sometimes you see me take my finger like this and do that. Now, I would generally leave that. I like that. But if you wanted to smooth this down right here, you need to have something to help smooth it down. You need a halftone. So that's my tone. I'm going here. I want to soften here into here. I need to make a color right in between that. So I'm right here. So if I just start to darken this down a little bit with some gray, I don't need to go all the way to a dark, just a little bit, and I pull that right along that edge, I soften that edge. Do you see that? And if I want to soften that a little more, I go this way. Now this painting was painted a month ago, and all of a sudden, let's I'm going to add a little extender to this because this is wet and dry. I like that color. I'll just mix it up. Just add some of that here so that starts to shadow it down. See how I've now smoothed out that color going into that rock. And I can pull, if I want the streak to come down, I can go like this and pull that down. I know that's going to happen. I know my paints. I know how they're going to move. I can soften this right here by just, I know this is wet here. I can pull this way and soften it back by pulling my finger that way. And all of a sudden I added more light and everything to that rock, to a painting, and it looks blended. And I did that painting a month ago, okay? So once you understand what we call the rheology of the paint, its ability to take moisture, absorb moisture and stuff like that, you can do all different kinds. That doesn't look too bad, but I like the spontaneity of the original. So I just take a little water here. I'll take it right back to where it was to begin with. Boom. That's my rock where I had it at the very beginning. And you can come back at any time. See, I like this roughness that comes in here. I like that. I like it to have that roughness. But you can always come back and add a little bit more. Maybe I'll add a mark or two more of light. I did kind of like that. I don't generally do this, but I did like that. Just a little bit more light onto that. Maybe a little bit more light right into there. And if I want to soften that out, I would find a tone right in between the two. So there's all your rocks. I like to do a lot of painting of what I call tone painting. In other words, I don't do a lot of blending. I can do blending, but blending to me is boring. I like to do tone painting. So this is dry now, right? So this is what I really like in alla prima, which means painting at once. I'll take some real light and I'm gonna pound on some light right here. Boom. There's my rock, right? And some of you just fell out of your chair because that's a lot of paint. You don't worry about it, okay? Don't worry about it. So now I want to soften it. I look at what is this color to what is this color. And here's my color, and here's where I really want to go. I just want to darken it down some. Take a little bit of burnt sienna, take a little bit of blue or red and green, whatever you're working in that area. Put that in and pull right along that edge. And see how that granulated stroke picks up that. Now see, I picked up a lot of white, so I want to pull that out of my brush a bit. Let's go grab a little more gray. Let's just pull that. See, just one stroke right through that. And I already start to break it up and add interest. I like to, you'll see me come in and maybe push a little bit. Drag. I always like to drag the light down into the shadow. That's how I like to do it. So I'll pull some of that light down into the shadow. And see, I love the interest that gives a rock. To me, it has more interest and more stuff going on than that one. And I can come back and add a little bit more, maybe another little stroke of a light plane there. I'll come back in. Let's just add a little bit of a shadow. Sometimes I'll leave it rough, right, with a bit of light and dark. And sometimes I do this, just drag it with that brush right over the edge, and that gives the bumpy look to the surface of a rock, see? And so everything we do, and as you go back, some of you that are beginners, and as you go back and start to watch some of the 30 Days of Roses. Go back and watch some of the videos that I have on landscapes, if you're really interested in landscapes. Go back and watch and listen this time for what I'm saying about the surface, okay? And you'll see me sometimes when I paint water. You'll see me when I paint water. You'll see me combine open medium and extender medium together, and you'll hear me say, because I like the grabbing of the extender, of the open medium, this grabs onto your brush a little bit, but I like the sliding factor of the extender. And you'll see me use that when I use a knife as well. You'll see me slide over. So, you know, when you're watching the videos, you're going to be listening for surface, what I call the surface tension, the rheology of the paint. Is my surface matte? Is my surface wet? Okay, here, this is still wet. See how this is still wet? I can still blend this because I added extender to this 20 minutes ago. And I can still blend that because it's still wet, okay? But this one over here was dry. But I love the look of the dry when especially as I'm coming up front. I love the look of the wet as I'm putting stuff on into the back. I like a little bit of granulation, but I also like it a little bit wet, okay? So I'll do some of these videos like this. I'll do it with some roses. I'll show you some other things, but concentrate on how your colors are working. Now, here's the thing here too, okay? So I've been painting on this, okay? I've been painting on this for a while here, and water is your solvent. So all of this, you should always, if you're using a good acrylic, you should be, even 20, 30 minutes later, be able to do this. Take it all up. If you go to your palette, and some of this color is the color I put down on the last video an hour ago, and I can take all of this up, see? I can just grab a paper towel and clean everything up. And if you can't do that with your acrylic that you're using, come in and just run it on your palette like this and start to clean all of this up, then you ought to look to changing your acrylic to one that is going to be solvent. This one stays sensitive to its solvent for several hours. You know, if you're out in the middle of a heat coming down or something on you, that's not going to happen. Maybe, 30 minutes. But you can extend that with extender. But if you can't reconstitute your colors like this, then that paint was not formulated to do any of these techniques. Does that make sense? So everything I show you here on the channel is formulated to this particular acrylics. And there's other great acrylics out there. And if you want to use those, we have to adjust their chemistry just a little bit, so that maybe maybe you can't do these techniques, maybe you can, but you have to adjust it a little bit. Most of the time, it's going to be what I show you here. It has to do with the movement of the acrylic over a dry surface or over a semi-wet surface, and how the solvent works on it, okay? All right, so I'll show you some more of these videos on this, and hopefully that'll help you and give you an idea how you can come in here and add a little bit more interest to your paint by understanding what we call the rheology of your paint film. How is that working, and how can you do it? Do you halftone, wet on wet, solvent blend? So I showed you here halftoning, wet into wet blending, and solvent blending on this one, okay? 3 different ways to use your acrylics. I have a lot more. I'll show you some more in some of the other videos. See you over there.